The blizzard came down so hard that Katrina Morgan could barely see 3 feet in front of her horse. And that was when she knew she was going to die out here in these God-forsaken California mountains. She had fled Sacramento 2 days ago with nothing but the clothes on her back, a half-empty canteen, and the desperate need to escape a man who had bought her like cattle from her drunken stepfather. The gold rush town of Columbia was supposed to be her salvation, a place where she could disappear among the miners and merchants, find work in a boarding house or laundry, anything that would keep her fed and free. But the November storm of 1852 had other plans, turning the mountain pass into a white nightmare that seemed determined to claim her life before Marcus Whitmore ever could. Her mare stumbled again, and Katrina felt the animal's exhaustion in every trembling muscle. The poor creature had given everything it had, and asking for more felt like cruelty. She dismounted, her legs nearly buckling as her boots sank into snow that reached past her knees. The wind screamed through the pines, driving ice crystals into her face like tiny knives. Her threadbare coat, suitable for Sacramento's mild winters, was no match for this high country fury. Already her fingers had gone numb inside her thin gloves, and her teeth chattered so violently she bit her tongue and tasted blood. "Come on, girl," she said to the mare, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Just a little further. There has to be shelter somewhere." But even as she said it, Katrina knew it was a lie. The world had become nothing but white and gray, earth and sky blending into one continuous wall of frozen death. She could no longer tell if she was walking uphill or down, if the trees to her right were the same ones she had passed 5 minutes ago or an hour ago. The cold was seeping through her bones now, making her thoughts sluggish and confused. Part of her wanted to simply lie down in the snow and sleep. It would be easier than this endless struggle. At least Marcus would never get his hands on her. The mare suddenly jerked her head up, ears pricked forward. Katrina followed the animal's gaze but saw nothing except more snow. Then the wind shifted for just a moment and she smelled it. Wood smoke. Her heart lurched with desperate hope. Smoke meant fire, fire meant people, people meant shelter. She grabbed the mare's reins and pushed forward in the direction she thought the smell had come from, but the wind swirled again and the scent disappeared. Had she imagined it? Was her frozen brain conjuring mirages the way desert travelers saw water that was not there? Then she saw it, a darker shadow in the white, angular and solid. A cabin. Katrina let out a sob of relief and stumbled toward it, dragging her reluctant horse behind her. As they got closer, she could make out more details. A small but sturdy structure built from logs, a stone chimney with smoke rising from it, a lean-to shelter on one side that would serve for the horse. The windows glowed with warm, orange light that seemed impossibly beautiful after hours of gray misery. She tied the mare under the lean-to, noting with gratitude that there was hay already there and the roof kept out most of the snow. Her hands fumbled with the knot, clumsy and stiff. Then she turned to the cabin door and raised her fist to knock. For a moment she hesitated. What if whoever lived here turned her away? What if they recognized her from wanted posters Marcus might have put up? What if they demanded payment she could not give? The wind gusted hard enough to nearly knock her over, and the decision was made. Katrina pounded on the door with the last of her strength. "Please," she called out. "Please, I need help. I will freeze out here." For a terrible moment there was no response, and she thought perhaps the cabin was empty despite the fire and smoke. Then she heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, and the door swung open. Heat rushed out to embrace her, and she found herself staring up at a man who seemed to fill the entire doorway. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that came from hard labor rather than excess flesh. His hair was dark brown, almost black, and fell to his collar in the back. He had not shaved in several days, and the stubble on his jaw emphasized the strong line of his face. But it was his eyes that caught her, gray-blue like the sky before a storm, and filled with immediate concern as he took in her bedraggled state. "Jesus Christ," he said, and his voice was deep and rough. "Get inside before you freeze solid." He reached out and physically pulled her into the cabin, his hands large and strong around her upper arms. The warmth hit her like a wall, and suddenly her legs would not hold her anymore. She felt herself starting to fall, and then the man caught her easily, lifting her as though she weighed nothing and carrying her to a chair near the fireplace. "Can you talk?" he asked, kneeling in front of her and starting to pull off her gloves. "What is your name? Are you alone out there?" "Katrina," she managed through chattering teeth. "Katrina Morgan, just me and my horse. I got caught in the storm." "Damn foolish to be traveling in this weather," he said, but there was no real anger in his voice, just worry. He had gotten her gloves off and was now examining her fingers with surprising gentleness. "Can you feel this?" He pressed on her fingertips, and she nodded. "They hurt." "Good. Hurting is good. Means they are not frozen through." He moved to her feet, unlacing her boots and pulling them off along with her soaked stockings. Her feet were white and bloodless, and when he touched them, she gasped at the pain. "Same here. You are lucky. Another hour and you would have had frostbite for certain." He stood and moved to a cabinet, pulling out a basin and filling it with water from a kettle on the hearth. He tested the temperature with his hand, then added some cold water from a bucket. "This is going to hurt like hell, but we need to warm you up slowly. Put your feet in here." Katrina did as she was told, lowering her feet into the basin. He was right. It did hurt, a fierce burning that made her gasp and grip the arms of the chair. But she bit her lip and endured it, knowing he was helping her. The man wrapped a thick wool blanket around her shoulders, then went to the stove in the corner and poured something hot into a tin cup. "Coffee," he said, handing it to her. "Strong and sweet. Drink it slowly." She wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for the warmth, and took a small sip. It was indeed strong, and he had added sugar and something else, maybe whiskey. It burned going down but left a pleasant warmth in her stomach. She looked at the man properly for the first time, taking in the worn denim trousers, the flannel shirt open at the throat, the leather suspenders. He had the look of a working man, someone who made his living with his hands and back. There were scars on his knuckles and a faint white line along his jaw. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You saved my life." He shrugged, looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Any decent person would have done the same. I am Emmett Dalton. This is my claim." "Claim?" She looked around the cabin with new understanding. It was small but well built, with a sleeping area in one corner, a small stove for cooking, shelves with supplies, and not much else. Tools hung on the walls, a rifle over the door. "You are a miner." "Was," Emmett said. He pulled another chair over and sat down across from her, his long legs stretched toward the fire. "Found enough color to keep me comfortable but not enough to make me rich. Mostly I hunt and trap now, sell the furs in Colombia or Sonora. This time of year I usually go down to the valley, but I had a feeling this storm was coming and I wanted to secure the cabin first. Looks like I timed it right." "Looks like I did too," Katrina said. She took another sip of the fortified coffee, feeling warmth spreading through her chest and limbs. The pain in her feet was easing to a dull throb, and her fingers were starting to tingle as feeling returned. "How long do you think the storm will last?" Emmett looked toward the window, where snow was still coming down in thick sheets. "Hard to say. Could be done by morning, could go for 3 days. November storms in the high country are unpredictable." He turned back to her, and those gray-blue eyes were assessing. "Where were you headed?" "Columbia," she nodded, not sure how much to tell him. "I heard there was work there. I was supposed to arrive yesterday, but I took a wrong turn somewhere and got lost in the foothills. Then the storm hit." "You are running from something," he said, and it was not a question. Katrina felt her back stiffen. "What makes you say that?" Woman traveling alone in November with inadequate supplies and clothing, pushing so hard she got lost. "You are either running from something or to something mighty important. And the way you keep looking at the door like you expect someone to burst through it tells me it is the former." She wanted to deny it, but what was the point? He had already figured it out, and lying would only make him suspicious. "There was a man," she said carefully. "My stepfather sold me to him. I ran." Emmett's expression darkened. "Sold you? Like a slave?" He called it settling a debt. "My stepfather owed Marcus Whitmore money, a lot of money. When he could not pay, Marcus offered to forgive the debt in exchange for me, as his wife." She said the last word with bitter emphasis. "My stepfather agreed without even asking me, had the preacher and everything ready. I was supposed to say my vows the next morning, but I ran that night." "Good," Emmett said, and there was an edge of violence in his voice. "Man like that does not deserve a wife. He deserves a bullet." Katrina looked at him with surprise. She had expected judgment, maybe accusations of being a runaway or a thief for taking her stepfather's horse. Instead, there was only anger on her behalf. "You believe me. Why would you lie? And even if this Marcus fellow was a saint, which I doubt, no woman should be sold against her will. This is America, not some medieval kingdom." He stood and went to check the fire, adding another log. "You are safe here. Storm is not going anywhere, which means neither is anyone looking for you. You can rest." The relief that washed over Katrina was so intense she felt tears prickling her eyes. She blinked them back, not wanting to show such weakness, but Emmett must have seen something in her face because his expression softened. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "Yesterday morning." "Some jerky." He made a disgusted sound and moved to the shelves, pulling down supplies. "No wonder you look half dead. I will make us some dinner. Venison stew with potatoes and carrots. Nothing fancy, but it will stick to your ribs." Katrina watched as he moved around the small space with easy competence, cutting meat and vegetables, adding them to a pot with water and herbs. His hands were large but dexterous, and he worked with the unself-conscious skill of someone who had been taking care of himself for a long time. She found herself relaxing in a way she had not for weeks, maybe months. There was something solid about Emmett Dalton, something trustworthy. Or maybe she,